Yo, what's up? Welcome to Groove Collective. Today we're going to be making a track inspired by Sammy Virji and John Summit, like this. The aim of Groove Collective is to teach you how to make all types of dance music and how to create the sounds. However, if you want to support me or you want to fast track your career, you can find a link in the description below. This will be to all sample packs that are used in my videos, as well as VIP one-to-one production coaching and mixing services. Okay, so let's get into making this drop. We're going to start off our project in 140 BPM, and I've just got a piano preset here, and the MIDI file is just taken from one of my tracks that I'm releasing at the end of this month called Talk, and the key is in F minor. You never wanna talk about it. You never seem to wanna care. So I'm just gonna laugh about it. Nothing but love is fair. Now, the vocal I've extracted from the track. I'm probably going to do another tutorial at some point on how I did the vocal processing. The vocal was taken from Splice, but I did mess around with some vocal manipulation techniques, as you'll be able to hear in this section here. I'm just gonna talk about it. I'm just gonna talk about it. But we'll come back to that another time. So let's load up Serum to start with. Now, the first preset I'm going to look at, which is actually in one of the packs in the description below, I am going to do another tutorial again at another point showing you how to make some of these presets. But if we just scroll down, we're going to go and find the synth patch, I'm on the Verge. Cool, and we're going to hit play. Now, we've already kind of got the bare bones of what the drop actually is. We need some more layers in there. We need to build on the drums and add the effects. But one of the things that I really enjoyed messing around with when I was making this patch and also the track was just the filter cutoff. So this is actually linked to both the sustain on envelope 2 and the filter cutoff and the effects. Now, if I hit play, we can hear what this does to the sound. Now we're going to load up our automation here, and all we're going to do is just mess around with this macro until we find something that makes the melody a little bit more dynamic. I'm going to start off with the filter a little bit higher, and then I'm actually going to lower the filter and then gradually raise it again. Okay, cool. So the next thing that we actually need to get into is the drums. So I'm going to load up the sample pack here. I'm just going to find a kick sound that I like. Cool. I like the sound of kick 6. I think that's going to work really well. And then I'm going to find a clap. Perfect. That works for me. And then we're going to find a hi-hat. Cool, let's try hat 16. Okay, I'm going to load this into Drum Machine Designer, and we're just going to sketch out what our drums are going to look like. So typically with this genre, we're looking at 4 to the floor with the kick, and then the clap landing on the 2 and the 4, and the hi-hat on the offbeat. And then what I'm going to do is actually convert this to MIDI, and it just gives me a little bit more freedom later on. Turn the velocity of the kick up so it's at its loudest volume, and then we can mess around with the actual volume later on. I'm definitely going to turn this hi-hat down and probably turn the clap down a little bit too. Cool. It's missing something in that low end. So we're going to have a look through some of the basses, and I'm just going to get rid of this top line of MIDI. Cool. And we're going to load up one of the bass presets called TBT. Make sure it's at the right octave. So that's way too low right now. Let's bring it up one. Still too low. Cool, and we've got that classic FM house bass. Bring in the drums. And then let's look to add another layer to that bass. And the next bass that I'm going to look for in the preset pack is a preset called Deep Boy. And again, it's just one of the other layers that I used in the track. Make sure it's at the right octave. Cool, so we're definitely going to have to EQ some of these later on, just so we're creating some space in the mix and they don't clash too much harmonically. But in context, it should sound a bit like this. And the last layer I want is actually a sub. So let's have a look through our presets, and we are just going to find the basic sub. Cool. Make sure it's at the right octave. It's so important. The last thing you want is that your sub bass is too low or it's too high, and you're going to have none of that low end energy actually present in the mix. And we can always just check it on an EQ as well. So if we're ever unsure, right now to me this seems probably a bit too low, so let's bring it up an octave. Cool. And then I'm actually just going to bring the cutoff filter all the way down to 100 Hz, just so we're only keeping that sub range. Hit play. Now, I don't like the fact that this sub has a really long decay on it just for this track, because I've got two kind of like plucky basses and I've got a plucky synth. So I also kind of want to make a little bit of a plucky sound with my sub bass as well. So we're just going to lower the sustain and lower the decay, turn down the attack, and then blend this in with the mix. Load our vocal in now. Cool, but right now it's just missing loads of flair. So let's see if we can just add to this a little bit, just by adding a couple of top loops and maybe messing around with the swing of the drums as well, but let's try not to overcomplicate it. Cool, so I've got this 4 to the floor top loop here. I think this should add a little bit more groove. I'm pretty sure this is one of the loops that I actually used in the original track that I created from scratch. And then we can also just add a little bit of flair by adding a touch of swing to these hi-hats. So I'm going to select 8th note here. Cool, so we're moving them ever so slightly. Now, if I really zoom in, for those of you who don't know what swing is, when I move this function around, we can see it's taking it off the grid. And it's called humanization. technically, and it's just to make our rhythms a little bit more groovy, a little less robotic sounding. So I'm taking these ever so slightly off the grid. It should add a little bit of swing and make it more dynamic. Let's find some stuff here that we can add to make this drop a little bit more interesting. I'm going to duplicate this across. There's some like really minor techniques that we could fill in here. So I'm going to actually move this final kick to the offbeat. And the other thing I want to do is actually layering another hi-hat on top. So let's do that now actually. Cool, let's try that. And what this will do is just perceive the listener to think there's actually more energy, which I suppose there technically is because you're adding more top end. However, it doesn't change what the track is doing, but it also introduces another layer to make the listener feel like a big change is happening. So these are just going to be playing on the offbeat like the other ones, and we're going to keep it fairly low in the mix, but we should hear a subtle difference between the start of the drop and the second half. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at some effects. Let's get potentially a crash in there right at the start of the drop. Cool, I like the sound of that. Let's add that in. Bring it super low in the mix. And then we could maybe look to layer that with a downlifter. So again, I'm going to go into my effects. And I'm going to find one of these downlifters that is relatively clean and isn't going to clash with the other textures that we have. Because obviously this is the drop, let's try and structure this just a little bit. I'm going to start this on bar 33, and then that way we've got room here for our build up later on. Now, another thing that we can look to do here is actually add a reverse cymbal and maybe use some clap effects. I like this one, and we're going to roll with this first one here. And we're just going to have this go straight into the drop. And then we're also going to use this clap effects. Now I need to make sure the clap actually lands where it's supposed to. So I'm going to line this up here. And then I'm going to just time stretch and pull this back. Cool. And then I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more, make sure this reverse cymbal is on the right line. Going to move this reverse cymbal to the second part of the drop. So go back to the start. Cool. I'm pretty happy with how that is sounding so far. Now, one of the things that I do like to do is actually just separate my kick into a different bus. That way I have more control over the signal, and later on when I'm mixing, it means that when I'm doing group processing, the kick isn't going to get compressed with all the other instruments that are in that group, and I can ensure it's the loudest part of the track. So I'm going to just rename this bus kick, And then I'm just going to bring it into my tracks here just because it makes it a little bit easier to look at. Cool, let's move this out. And then we're just going to sidechain. So I'm going to use Kickstart 2 here by Nicky Romero. The plugin's fairly cheap. I'd definitely pick it up if you're into EDM production. It makes it a lot easier and quicker rather than messing around with a compressor. But you can always use a compressor if not. So we're actually going to route the sidechain to our kick. Now I'm going to select audio. And then we are just going to select one of these presets here. Let's use the classic chain and bring down the mix to about 70%. And we're just going to duplicate this over to our basses and our sub. Awesome.